And spawning hit the top right-hand side for Team Liquid. It is Mikolaja Onogonski, Elazer.
The great slayer of AI. And in the bottom left, for the rebellion, it's the captain. It's Harstem.
Nikolai, I think it's how you say his name more or less. Nikolai?
Yes.
I call him Nikolai.
To my knowledge, I want to say that a J with a line through it is effectively like it. It's like an I. It's like how, the Romans, for example, they don't have a J. It's Julia or Julius, and we just kind of move on to Julius. And I think it's kind of the same but opposite, where their J is closer to an I sound, like closer to a vowel.
Very cool.
I could be totally making things up, but I think that's how that works.
No clue. No clue. Onogoski, that's a difficult one as well. That one I have no idea. But I'm gonna go with Onogoski.
Mm-hmm. Well, see, here's the thing. As long as you try, as long as you try, that's all that matters, right?
Sure. Let's go with that.
We're not in a world where results matter at all. You try, and that's good enough.
This is true. Yeah. Fact.
Sorry?
Facts.
Facts,
I agree, yeah.
Okay.
Well, gotta try.
So, you talked going into this about how Elazer is this aggressive Zerg. He is probably the best in the world at playing this Elazer style. He's talked about how he's kind of finally come to terms with the fact that he is not going to play like other players will. He's going to play like he does. And that is, we've seen some marked improvement from him, from his results since kind of figuring that out. But what are we looking for then, Cats? If we're looking at these aggressive options, if we're looking at this kind of very stylistic Zerg, what can we expect out of Elazer?
We can expect a lot of aggression, a lot of mid-game timings, right? And ideally when he gets set up for those, he starts flooding and he never stops. And he is excellent with the multitasking there, right? He takes a lot of his plate by making multiple overlords at once. Sometimes, and that just frees up actions, right? So it's maybe not the most efficient move ever, but it frees him up to do what he wants to do. So I think we are to see a very aggressive Elazer, and I'm with you. And I think that a lot of the things that we say and do as human beings and as players, is kind of like the story that we tell ourselves based on what we're observing or for our own patterns, right? So it's funny with Elazer because he doesn't always feel like he's come to terms with who he is as a player. And if you watch his stream, he's often considering other options. And then, his reasoning for, say, not doing what might be the most proper way to follow up against a certain brand of units or something like that. A lot of the time, it's just yeah, I mean, that would be good, but I don't really like that unit. It's like, okay. So, and secretly, I think there's other reasons such as I can't execute because I'm not used to, right? I can't execute at the same level as a Serral could with both Vipers and Infestors out on the field. I don't have the hotkey set up for that, right? That would be, I think, an honest assessment as well from an Elazer that, yeah, is very synced into his playstyle, but has mastered it to a degree that no other player really has. So he can be extremely fun to watch, and I love to see that sort of fingerprints from players. I am of the opinion that if you could combine Elazer and Lambo into one, for example, or Elazer and someone even like Serral, who's a little bit more passive at times, it would be so very cool and dangerous.
Yeah, and I think also the thing we got to talk about here is if everyone played the same, right? It would be, Serral would probably win, whatever. But because Elazer plays a style that is different, that is something that not only is he theoretically the best in the world at playing that style that he plays, but other players run into it less, so they're going to have less practice. So kind of on both sides of the coin, it does favor him playing kind of just like himself. But he is going to have to deal with this pressure coming in. You see a couple lings on the other side. Doesn't seem like they're going to get that much done. And now here come more depths. And this is at least one queen that seems destined to go down because it's off creep, it's slow.
There's a transfuse.
There we go. Okay.
There's another transfuse coming up as well from the other queen. So these 6 queens are gonna try to hold the flank as the links try to chase after the adept shades. Elazer identifies that he doesn't have enough links, so turns around his queens to try and aid in the upcoming fight, but it's actually Harstem to disengage. And now that means Elazer has had some time to make some roaches here, though Harstem's adepts number are growing very quickly with the roaches. The shade should be near impossible. And I think Elazer has at least thwarted this initial aggression, though there is a Dark Shrine on the way, and no real answer to that just yet.
This is actually, yeah, there are no spores on the map at all. But this is interesting. We're not seeing more roaches as kind of the standard response. We're just seeing lings and lings and lings, but no ravagers, right? There are generally two responses to this, as the Adept's not going to complete their shade into the main. You go and you build lings to buffer the first side, lings and queens, and then you build a bunch of roaches, and that's kind of what you want to do. Or you build a bunch of lings and you have ravagers, and that's kind of how this goes. But now, oh man, with the DTs here, one in the natural, one in the third, Adepts in the main base as well. And again, Cats, we said it, there are no spores. They're getting started right now, but this represents almost game-ending damage from Harstem. Now, lings are going to get on top of these Adepts, but they're going to shade out fairly quickly. And again, the big deal is these DTs, which have only killed 2 workers thus far, but they're going to get on top of the queens. And you talked about transfuse as well. Some of them, they're running out just a little bit. Spores outside of the natural are going to go down here as well. And it seems like for Harstem, it's not about the first push, but it's more about the slow burn at this point.
Yeah, I think that Harstem is very good here at identifying what Elazer has to work with, and he sees, hey, you're not making enough roaches, you continue to make links, well, my Adepts are always going to trade effectively against that, so he continues on warping in, right? I think if there was enough roaches at any point from Elazer, Harstem would have probably stopped this. But as a result of you know, seeing what he sees, he's kind of free to just continue to warp in Adepts, and I think this is a misstep from Elazer to not have continued on with the roach production that you were mentioning. And it will cost him dearly. Maybe not game ending right off the bat, but just about, right? 51 workers on the side of the Protoss player to 35 of the Zerg. Elazer has to make something happen, and Lings are really, you know, they have a tough time doing that.
I can't believe I think it was 3 DTs that were warped in on top of the 20 Adepts that were out there, that as a result of that, 4 workers went down. Only 4 workers died out of everything. There was no overseer, there were no spores, there was nothing to keep the drones alive. And yeah, sure, you know, the count is down, you had to build a bunch of units. Like, this is not a good position for Elazer to play in. But he only lost 4 drones to what I think would, for most Zergs, have just been absolutely no economy left over.
Yeah, that's fair. At the same time, like for most Protoss players, they would be committing onto the economy with the Adepts as a means to sacrifice them while the roaches are killing them. But because Elazer is so heavy on Lings, he's instead killing Lings, which are workers that Elazer didn't make, right? So it's kind of
fair, yeah.
It's kind of the same thing, because yeah, Elazer's setting himself behind by utilizing so much larva in order to even contest the Adepts in the first place. So he is in an equally bad situation as if he had taken a good amount of economic damage here.
Man, it's very fair. Ooh, Lings try to get on top of the Immortal, but the rest of the army there, well positioned. And now we kind of slowed down a little bit, it seems like. Harstem, I really thought he was going to go into Disruptors, actually, with the Robo Bay, but instead adding in Colossus, Blink just about done. And where do you think he goes? Is this just like going to be a 2-3 Colossus, like +1 Blink timing? Or is he kind of evolve into the mid game a little bit more?
I think he should be scouting and then making a decision based on that, right? Like, as long as his opponent's not scaling quickly, not going fast into a hive or some other tech that might be scary, I think you can just continue to warp in the same type of units, continue to make Colossus, continue to grow your ball, and then it will eventually become very difficult for Elazer to trade into it with just the basic army composition that he has going for him. So 2 Immortals here are going to look for Roach pickups, gonna find just the one for the time being, as another one will fall, or not. Did it fall? I'm not sure.
The transfuses were good enough. And you know, I love the velocity that Immortal, the absolute oomph that Immortals have. You know, most units, you stalker killer roaches and just kind of falls apart and dies. But you kill it with a couple of Immortals and it goes flying back 10 feet. I mean, they're the sound and graphical design of Immortals, of killing things with Immortals, just makes me a little happy.
Yeah, and this does look like a scary attack from Harstem, who's gonna spot some Banelings as well, trying to be morphed on the side. And you know, like, those Adepts are the only units that are not gonna continue to scale too well, especially against the Banelings when they are able to be played out on the field. There's 3 on the way right now, but Baneling speed is not yet ready, and Harstem's just posturing, but he has an army that he can force field with and disengage should he want to, so poking will be really nice. 3rd Colossus on the way, and I wouldn't mind some Disruptors being added from here on out, right? You'll gain more value out of Disruptors once there is enough Colossus that they're not all outputting their damage all at once, and once the army is also growing for Elazer, which makes the splits all that much more difficult with the chunky army that Roaches can be. So yeah, I like the way that Harstem is kind of playing off of his lead early on. And I think at this point we've passed the threshold where maybe his best play is just simply to max out before moving out. So it takes a fourth, consistent with that.
Yeah, Bay Banelings try to get on top of this. The splits are nice, but the Lynx around is going to be enough to deal with these Adepts. They get heavy damage on the hatch, but they do not kill it off. And you know, I think that's maybe what Harstem would have liked. But also, you talk about Harstem maxing out. Cats, I don't think there's a lot of room in Harstem's army for about 15 Adepts. But it may have been a little bit too early to totally throw those away. And granted, they were trying to get something done. But this does potentially give Elazer a bit of a timing here as Harstem. A lot of his supply is down. And, Roach Ravagerling Bane, you get the right angles, it can kill a lot of stuff.
No, yeah, completely agreed. I mean, better to make those work when you're pushing out and threatening with your army on another place, right? For them to have a shot at actually doing some damage when the Lynx are out of position. As Elazer now is Elazering onto the fourth of Harstem, looking to use a lot of these units. The Colossus are gonna get gotten on top of, and Harstem trying to micro his best, but there is so much Zerg here from Elazer. The Stalkers that would have loved to soak those Baneling shots are all the way in the back, unfortunately. And the Shield Battery and the Overcharge, I don't think, has been utilized. And as a result, both Colossus attempting to be juggled will be losing one of those. Only one remains now, and a very successful attack here from Elazer.
Yeah, 2 Colossus go down. A lot of all the Archons go down. There were some Immortals there. They're dead as well. And Elazer, you're right. He just Elazers them. I mean, he was super far down in that game, but Cats, you know what they say. 50 Banelings, they overcome a lot.
Yeah, especially with the Stalkers out of position, right? Like, if those Stalkers can be there to soak up some of those Baneling shots, they are excellent at that. They are excellent at repositioning as well. Like, they can blink around and whatnot, right? So you can cover those Baneling spots as they are attempt at getting on top of your army. The more beef you have, the stronger the Colossus are. So those Stalkers being out of position there comes to haunt Harstem. And now he is in a tougher position, right? Like, when he was at 150 supply looking to max out, I felt pretty good about it. Now he's at 130 supply and in a similar position otherwise to an Elazer that is very likely to try against him.
And I'm with you as well. I really would have liked to see some disruptors added in against an army like this. Colossus are great if they're able to take a straight up fight, or they're able, and there are good force fields there. Well, there are no sentries in this army anymore. There's like one actually. But because Elazer was able to flood in from every side, the force fields were never going to be good enough, and this is also a problem. Stalkers blink, they deal with the one on the left side, probes get pulled, but there are Banelings in every base, and guess what? Elazer is going to come crushing on into this fourth base. The Miles go down, Shield Battery Overcharge gets popped, one Colossus sitting behind, and there's no force field. There we go. Elazer comes storming back. That was a pretty rough start to that game. He takes up 1.
Yeah. Tough luck for Harstem there, and I completely agree with you. I think he sacrificed those Adepts a little bit too early and for no value at all. I mean, difficult to make that decision. Maybe he didn't anticipate that many Lings with the support of Banelings on the side of Elazer, to where maybe he could have more easily disengaged or committed to a Shade, perhaps, if he could have pulled the Roach army on the other side. But Elazer kind of doing successfully what maybe Harstem could have looked to do, which is pulling the Stalkers out of position twice with his Rumbice to then engage the less beefy army with, Bane Roach Ravagers. So really well done on his side of things. And yeah, I mean, if you're Harstem, you're going to be a little bit sad about that game, right? Because you just needed to be a little bit cleaner, but of course it's going to always be so difficult against an Elazer that is just an expert at breaking you. Yeah,
I mean, if you all in enough times, sometimes that will just push right on through. And Elazer, he only had to do it once, really. 50 Banelings, they broke everything. I almost wonder whether Harstem just wanted to wall off better. Like, one of the reasons that the hero style started to get really good was part of it was the maps, and he was able to wall off a lot of areas and just really not give significant angles for Zergs to go for those big surrounds like he was looking for. So kind of your naturals home, and then he could feel comfortable going aggressive because there was only kind of one attack path in. Obviously, that's not nearly as much of a thing on Ancient Cistern, but maybe that would have helped out a little bit, even if you can kind of choke things out a little bit more. But we're going to move on to Babylon, Cats. That's game 2. And, despite that pretty rough start, Elazer's sitting up 1.
Yeah, there should be a little bit easier of a map for Harstem in terms of defense against Elazer. I would imagine this is his map pick, whereas Ancient Cistern is a known Sergi map, right? It is very difficult to cover every corridor, and there's like a lot of space basically out on the map where it's difficult for the Protoss players to take engagement. So Let's see if Harstem can do something here as Elazer send out his drone so early to look for the probe and make sure that he gets that hatchery down. So it's gonna meet the probe almost out on the middle of the map. And normally a lot of Zergs, you know, send this drone out and basically plan to make a drone as soon as they see the probe, putting them at 17 before dropping the hatchery. But Elazer sends it early enough that he guarantees a 16 hatch, just basically saying, I know what you're gonna do. I know that you like to block my expansion. So I'm just gonna account for that preemptively.
Yeah, and it's interesting too. I was talking to Elazer, I think like end of last year, and he really went into the math on how much you lose by having to take the third, or your natural as your third is your natural, whatever you want to call it, because of the mining time that you lose, right? Sending drones over back and forth. And so he is well aware, right, of how valuable getting that natural is, or at the very least, you know, getting the 16 hatch so you have your timings lining up at the very least. But as we move into this game, cats, you know, we saw Elazer. He took a lot of damage from those DTs and those and the Glaive deaths. Maybe you know, he might have even been able to take some more, but good defense on that side. And then he maxes out. He gets 50 Banes or whatever it is. He runs across the map. Harstem's not ready. What do we want to see different from Harstem in this game number 2, particularly if he puts himself in that advantageous situation that he got into in game 1?
It's very difficult to say, right? Because I think it comes down to vision and just like, for at least in that first game, just where his units are. I think if those stalkers are at the front, or he can section off less units to deal with the run-bys, or just have better preemptive walls or stuff like that, which he is very good at doing, then I think he would have been able to close out that game. But it's difficult to say because he did get the advantages in the early game, and still Elazer came out with the win. So yeah, it's tough. As far as the transfer onto the third, I personally hate it, but the math isn't too bad actually, right? Because it's only like a few drones that you end up having to transfer, and the distance is not so long because there's also a distance that you would have to subtract, which is the distance from the main to the natural. So it's really only a small stretch from the natural to the third. You don't end up losing that actually all that much, and the Protoss has to go for that early scout. So. Scarlet, for example, in her assessment, it's less about the economy and more about just having the space for these units like the Oracles and the Adepts to maneuver and try to find damage. This makes it more awkward and difficult for the server.
And even if it kind of at this point in the meta where we really don't see Adepts get much of anything, these two Adepts for the most part, it's stress, right? It's another thing that you have to pay attention to when you are just building yourself up into the game that maybe makes you miss something else, or just, again, it's not quite as comfortable. So for now, Overlord will go down, and Harstem, he's going for the same thing. Game 2 as he did for game 1, at least the same start, right? Glaive Adepts on the way, Robo down. Does he go into Dark Shrine again this time, do you think, or does he go for one of the different kind of follow-ons from this build?
I don't think you go for Dark Shrine twice in a row, but you know, if he has identified a stronger pattern in Elazer and not dropping those spores and consistently beats him with that, then maybe that's an option. So maybe a little bit less commitment, maybe a little bit faster to the third or something like that is what I would like to see. All
right, so for now, Elazer, he has that 4-minute Roach Warren. Glaive Adepts are about halfway done, and well, we're going a piece. The thing we should point out, of course, is that there is, again, no spore. Elazer, he has a little bit more time before technically he needs to drop it, but we're not seeing that for the moment. And yeah, Adepts just running across. And okay, this is what I was looking for, actually. There's a Robobay very quickly. The Hero's been playing a lot of this. This Disruptor, we used to call it the Jound style, this Disruptor into Adept into Disruptor drop play, where you force a bunch of Roaches out, and then Disruptors go and try to punish that one. But the way Elazer played in game 1 and the way he's playing here as well, it's a very Ling-heavy defense, and Disruptors are not nearly as good against that.
No, but Colossus are. So I'm curious to see if Harstem can spin something on this, because what you're saying is true, right? Like, it's kind of like the 1-2 punch. Like, the Disruptors are excellent against Roaches and the Adepts are excellent against Lings. I think seeing this many Lings, if you're Harstem, I would love to see him continue to do the Adept Warpins and maybe consider a Colossus instead of a Disruptor. I've never seen it, but he has the setup for it, so that's what I would like to see.
Oh, that'd be really cool if we saw that. You know, Colossus drops here into ZVP, but oh, that's a big surround, and the Warp Prism's just not even there, so the Adepts, a couple of them are going to go down. Game 1, Harstem did a ton of damage, and he still kind of fell down about 5 minutes later because the Elazer was able to macro up. This time, First of all, when you're going as non-committal as this, when you're going disruptor drops behind that, you really don't want to lose that depth. Their job is to force units out, not necessarily to trade poorly. I mean, you never want them to trade poorly, but their job really isn't to trade nearly as much. So losing those adepts removes a little bit of map control. Disruptors are out. And here's the interesting thing here, cats. Normally at this point in the game, we'll see disruptors, or we'll see warp prism speed, right? You want that the warp prism to have 2 disruptors in it. You want it to be very fast, getting damage done. Harstem has skipped that. What does that get him?
I mean, it's still potential to find the roaches, but it's just going to be a little bit less maneuverability, right? Like, I agree, the warp prism speed is really nice just to look for the angles, find the roaches, and go and get out completely unscathed if possible. But it is a costly investment, so maybe here's an insight into what Harstem wants to do, maybe using the disruptors with his army. Then you don't really want or need the warp prism speed.
I mean, we have certainly seen kind of follow-ups on this build when it gets some damage done, where you get the 2 disruptors, you move into you build 2 colossus behind it, and it's just a big 2 disruptor, 2 colossus all in. But for now, yeah, you're right. He's right with this army. Queen's trying to get damage on the warp prism, but not just yet. One gets low. Transfuse is going to be good enough for the moment here. And Disruptor Drop's looking for an angle, but it doesn't seem like it's going to find it. There we go. Shot goes out, gets 1 roach. And for now, yeah, this is just, it's trading, but I can't help but feel that Harstem wanted more than that.
Yeah, it's okay, right? Forces the disengage, trades well with the adepts in the first place, as Elazer runs a lot of his army back to prevent the shade. And then, yeah, I mean, the disruptors are not really going to find much more because there's not much to find. There aren't that many roaches out on the field or queens, so just zoning off the links is the best thing that they can do, it feels like, for the time being. And yeah, now a Colossus and Thermal Lance in production. That will be a great add-on here for Harstem, as he gets a little bit of a run by Elazer does. On the other side, oh, beautiful shot onto Lynx! A little bit of a rarity there, as Lynx can easily outmaneuver those.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, it's what, 10 Lings? That's not nearly as impactful, right? That similar size shot on a bunch of roaches. So, you know, Elazer, he's just sharking around. He's got his 5th base on the way, 4th base done, all the way up to 80 workers all of a sudden. But it does feel like Harstem, we're seeing, okay, how many Colossus does he have? He's got 1. Is he? Oh, no, he's very supply blocked here, so he can't get that second one. Not just yet, and that's actually going to slow his timing down a little bit. I do feel like he was looking for that, you know, 2-3 Colossus, 2-3 Disruptor type of idea that we fairly often see his shots go out. They get a Ravager, they get a Roach, but key thing, Disruptors, one of them actually gets very low, so the snipe opportunities, they're not going to be quite as powerful as they once were.
Yeah, Baneling Speed almost ready for Elazer as well, which is going to be really nice once again against these Adepts. So Harstem is going to be looking to trade them at some point, perhaps in conjunction with the army hitting somewhere else, or perhaps if he can scatter them and split them well enough, they can do their job against the Zerglings. But if they're clumped up, those Banelings are going to have a field day, so he has to be very careful. There's no force fields either, right? So nothing to pair up with the Colossus against the Banelings very easily anyway.
Yeah, no, not really. And so Harstem, he's got a 3rd Colossus on the way. He's building a actually, you know, fairly significant wall here on the left side. So that does appear to be kind of one of the things. This is a pure wall, right? With the gateway and the Nexus. I'm not sure whether anything can get through there. Okay, a probe can. So he's adding a couple more gates. Oh, that's an ugly wall now. That's a target for some Banes. But anyway, it's not even going to be allowed to get fully up here because here come the Roches. And now Harstem, it's a bit of a pickle, right? It's this beautiful wall you built for yourself, but if you can't really shoot over it super well, it's kind of working more against you than it is for you, right?
Yeah, it indicates that he wants to move out and buy kind of time with this wall, should he need to, for Warpins, to not have to pay attention to those Banelings. But Elazer, I mean, maybe the least likely player to give you time is probably what it says on his yearbook, right? So, another decent shot onto Lynx here. The Disruptors are going to disengage, and that is a lot of Banelings. I mean, these Disruptors can be worth their weight in gold if they can get just one good shot onto the Baneling clump.
Yeah, Storm 2/3 of the way done here as well. High Templar is just sitting behind this wall. And I really like how Harstem's playing this, right? He was going to move out, I think, but now he's 3 Colossus on the other side of the wall. He's got these Warp Prism Disruptors that he can maybe get some damage done. Storm is going to be done in 5 seconds. And Elazer's trying desperately to break on through here, but the longer this goes on, I mean, Harstem's army is getting so powerful right now.
Yeah, but I mean, he's not in a position to drop 2 storms on the banelings, right? So the banelings are always going to connect with something unless they go against the wall. And now there is a situation where maybe Harstem can clean up some of these weakened banelings. A lot of them do explode, but Elazer still has a lot of stuff, and he's attempting to Elazer Harstem once again. Is it going to be enough? The next storm lands dead center of the Roach Ravager composition with the next set of warpins and potentially a battery overcharge available. Harstem has managed to deflect this aggression at the cost of his Wolof and a bunch of supply. Elazer is in the laser mode as well, 81 workers. So he does not plan on slowing down or stopping, but Harstem will have that 4th this time around to work with. So should have considerably faster reinforcements and a much better position than he did in the previous game.
I mean, that trade was almost perfectly even. Like a little bit more minerals destroyed for Harstem, a little bit more gas destroyed. Actually for Harstem as well, so slightly in his favor, but again, very, very close, which is always just a little bit funny. As there we go. Let's get that away. But at this point, right? How many more? Well, I was gonna say how many more times can Elazer do this, but he's got. You're right. He's got 83 drones. His economy is massive. But he only has 10 banelings on the map right now. Morphing is 15 more, but we're not going to have the solid 60 or 70 banelings that he hit with that last time.
Disruptor now gonna connect as Elazer baits the shot by picking up the ramp, and now he might be ready to go. There is 4 storms available, I believe. Harstem has to be good about these. There aren't very many banelings as the Roaches now try to get on top of the Templar. Nice storm onto the Roaches in the back as well as the banelings, as a lot of them will fall. But where's the rest of the army of Harstem? It is completely out of position at the 3rd. Might need a recall, but now the Nexus is slow enough that it might get focused down regardless. So now Harstem in a very difficult position once again as Elazer does clear his 3rd. And Elazer is successfully doing his thing.
He is, and at least the Colossus here is very unlikely to go down. It's sitting. Notice how he placed it. First of all, of course, you're microing away, right? That's goal number 1A, but he's putting it right near the cliff. So if worst comes to worst, the Colossus can just kind of run up onto high ground and continue to get the damage that it wants to get done. But those were expensive trades coming in from Elazer. I mean, yes, they got the 3rd base, they killed workers, but it was only 12 probes. Granted, I think that was maybe all that was mining at that base. But as the armies continue to grow, as the tech of Harstem continues to improve, yes, this is a significant position for Elazer right now. But again, as we look at how things are going to scale, is that enough?
Yeah, Harstem has to hold comfortably once, and I mean, it's up to these storms. Now there is more on the way. I mean, the banelings from Elazer on the other side attempting to catch some probes. The Templars now angling to get some of those storms, and now they get flanked. Beautiful blink from Harstem to protect his boys, but 3 of them will fall regardless. The last storm is there and will thin out this army of Elazer, who has some link reinforcements on the way. They will have to contend with the warpins of Harstem, but no battery means that the Dutch is going to have to concede, and Elazer does it.
Yeah, the Dutchman